Hey everybody, welcome back to the Senators Roundtable. I'm your host Jacob Billington, joined by Dayton and Paul. I feel like it's been a while since the three of us have been together. I might be wrong on that. But again, playoff season is on. Some pretty exciting series going on, but been pretty quiet in the land of Ottawa. Outside of today, they hired Rob DiMaio as their director of player development and the director of pro scouting. He spent 14 years in the same roles with the Blues. And last year he was the Ducks, basically the equivalent of Ryan Bonus. He's the general manager of the San Diego Gulls. Um, it's really hard to judge a director of player development and pro scouting. But do either of you have any thoughts on this hiring? We'll start with you, Dayton.
Sure. I like it. He's been in the league for a long time. He's been working in scouting and pro development and development. Um, Assistant GM last year with the Ducks, like you mentioned. Yeah, he's got a good career. I think working with the Blues was, there's no complaints with that. He would have won a cup with the Blues, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And lots of those players have become pretty good. He was also a Medicine Hat Tiger, which is the team I grew up cheering for. So I like that.
Good. Well, and he had quite a fairly lengthy NHL career
He
too. So
did.
like he knows what to look for. You get these guys and like obviously if somebody offered me a job for director of pro scouting, I'd be more than happy to take it. But somebody that played in the NHL is always going to have the better view.
Yes, for sure. And having that experience, I think it's a good person to have. He's not like a big name or anything, but I'm more so of the opinion that you don't need a big name to have a successful front office. Uh, and DeMaio, maybe most notably when he was with the Tigers, played alongside Vancouver's GM Trevor Linden. So that's it's a very skilled team, and he scored more goals than Linden that year, which is I don't know. I think that's neat. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I think it's a good hiring. I think it shows kind of what the summer of Steos is going to be, and it's building a strong team around himself. We spent so many years with Pierre Dorion being the only voice in the room,
mhm.
and now we've got some more people coming in, seeing what kind of impacts that they can make, and yeah, I just think that it's evidence that Steve Steos and Michael Andlauer are ready to build a competent front office. Paul, do you have any thoughts on the hiring?
Well, I agree with that. I mean, he is a good judge of talent, and Lord knows the Senators this summer are going to need a good judge of talent. So he has that reputation. He and Steos have a long relationship, apparently. So I agree with you, Jacob. Steos is building a front office coaching staff in his own image. That's to be expected. I think it was inevitable because they gutted the current scouting staff with Rob Murphy's departure. Um, I guess the other thing that came to mind, not well, they're not directly related, but where does all of this leave Daniel Alfredsson? I don't know where he fits in the organization. Uh, that could be an interesting question to watch this
Yeah,
summer.
that is a really good question. I think in the kind of Travis Green introductory, they were said we're like, we're talking to Daniel Alfredsson, see if he wants to be on the bench, see if he wants to be behind the bench, see what kind of position he wants. So I think he's just kind of there helping out in practices and stuff, and he's probably gonna have a position in player development if I had to guess. And it's just kind of um, working with the guys in practice. That's kind of my thought.
Yeah.
Being a strong voice.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's what Sean Donovan and Wade Redden do currently, isn't it?
Correct. Yeah. So just having that impact, the plethora of experience and the skill and the talent and whatnot, and just we saw a lot of Alfredson working with Tim Stutzel to kind of become the best that he can be, and that's kind of the stuff that I think he should be just on the ice of practice in the locker room, giving his advice and chiming in when he can.
Well, maybe that's all Alfredson can be, right? Given his experience. I mean, he's been a player, not much experience on the management side. I know he did say when he came back to the Senators that he wanted, I think I've got it right, a big role or a significant role. So this is one he didn't get. Stay tuned.
I think that if he went to Steve Staios and said, I want the head coach job, it would have been his. But as we all know, coaches get hired to get fired. That's as far as it really goes. And I think that putting him in a position as the head coach is miserable. Like we saw how it worked with Patrick Waugh in Colorado. Beloved player, everything, all that. And then he's gone. And now it kind of tarnishes your career as a Colorado Avalanche legend or an Ottawa Senators legend.
Well, yeah, that's right. I mean, people in Ottawa love Alfredsson, and to your point, I mean, eventually they put him in as coach, and they're going to hate him, right? He's going to go. So
it's the same reason that people always say don't borrow money from family. It's there's always going to be a problem to start. Dayton, did you have any last thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, I think if Alfredsson had mentioned that he wanted to be the coach, there wouldn't have been any other hunt. But clearly he didn't want that position. So yeah, I could see him joining some of his former teammates in that development role. I think that's good for the Senators. I don't know if you need, that kind of pressure on such a beloved figure, especially with a team that, I mean, we're not sure really what they're going to be next year. Are we going to see more of this? Or are we going to see some actual improvements? And it really seems just up to the winds of fate on how this team performs. To some degree, I think there's issues that have been overlooked that also contribute to some of that. But the suspension and the injuries, you can't predict that. So I enjoy Alfredsson being involved with the team, but I don't think he needs to be a coach.
Yeah, I agree. So you talk about what kind of improvements we're going to make, and I think that Steve Staios has one of the busiest off seasons ahead of him that he might ever have. So far, his only trades was trading Tarasenko for a third and a fourth, and then acquiring, I believe his only trades other than that was acquiring Wyatt Bongiovanni and Jamison Reese, which I like both of those deals, add some good AHL depth. And Jamison Reese I like as a prospect, but he hasn't really made a big splash. He had his hands tied with Tarasenko and then 2 AHL deals. But there are a lot of names being at least whispered to the Ottawa Senators, not necessarily outright rumors, but some names connecting them. So Linus Ullmark, I believe it was Bruce Garriock, he came out and said that Ottawa went hard at Ullmark at the trade deadline. Do we think that Ottawa revisits at the draft? He said that they're likely to push hard at the draft. One, Ullmark has a no trade clause, so that could come into play and just end of conversation. But is Linus Ullmark the guy that you should think that the Ottawa Senators should target, Paul?
Well, I think they've got to give it a shot, right? I mean, I've written several times referencing potential for an Ullmark Chychrun trade. The thing I like about that is it would be one of those rare occasions when you can make a one-for-one player trade. The salary of both is similar. The term is similar. Boston needs help on the blue line, and Lord knows we need help in goal. So theoretically, it's possible. You have to wonder whether Ullmark would come to Ottawa. We'll see. But, Toronto's in the hunt, as are a number of other teams. So I think he's got to give that a shot.
Dayton, what do you think? Do you think that Ullmark should be a target for the Senators?
I'm kind of torn. Like, Ullmark would be a massive upgrade on paper, but also I don't think goaltending is the root of the issue. I think there's a lot of team structure issues that need to be dealt with first, rather than just grabbing a new goalie and running the same thing again. Because then I think you're going to get another Korpisalo. You're going to get another Matt Murray. You're going to get another problematic goalie who can't stay healthy, because that's what they have set up right now, is to overwork their goalie and not provide them support. And then, it's all the goalie's fault when they can't stop a beach ball. Yeah. Once is weird, twice is a coincidence, three times there's bigger problems. And I think we're on 4 or 5 right now. So yeah, I don't oppose acquiring Ullmark, but I think there's other things that need to be fixed first.
So, yeah, my only rebuttal to that argument would be, how many people did Ottawa sign that were even close to Ullmark's level? I would say Jonas Korpisalo was the only one that made sense to be a starting goalie. Cam Talbot, I mean, obviously he showed that he could do it this year. He was fantastic in LA, but like, was anybody really expecting him to be a 9-15 goalie in Ottawa? No, I don't think so. He was he's getting older and whatnot. Wasn't fantastic in Minnesota. I don't know. I don't think that they've gone for the big ticket outside of Korpisalo, which was always risky, to be that undeniable number one.
Well, goalies are hard to get, right? I mean, my theory is you have to develop them. I mean, last summer when they acquired Korpisalo, there was nothing on the market. So, what's Dorion to do? And again, he hyped it. He announced he had solved Ottawa's goaltending problems when he signed Korpisalo. Not.
Loves making those statements.
So, I don't know. It's a tough spot with goaltending. There's just not a lot of good goaltenders out there. People don't make them available. And, Ullmark, well, he's available this year.
Yeah, I think going for Ullmark is a great idea. I'm going to throw another goalie at you, Jacob Markstrom. Would you do it? He has a full no move clause, so I don't know if that ends up working out. But would you go for it, Dayton?
I think he's riskier than Ullmark. He's more expensive than Ullmark, if I remember correctly. Yeah. I don't oppose doing the Ullmark. I'm not against getting a Markstrom. I think there's other issues. Like going back to Talbot, he was fine in Minnesota, right? He played 33, 49 games, and he was a 9-15, 9-11 goalie.
Was he that good, really?
Yes.
I remember him just being like a 906 kind of. That's where my mind was at.
With the Flames a year before that, he was a 919. He's a very consistent goalie until he arrived in Ottawa.
Okay.
There was a year with Edmonton and Philly that he split that was not great. But going back, he was pretty much consistently putting up a 910, 920 save percentage with whoever he played with. And then Ottawa, somehow that falls apart. So is it Talbot's fault? No.
I think you convinced me a little bit there.
So Korpisalo had some really good looks in Columbus, had some really good looks in LA. And of course, I do agree he was riskier. But yeah, also just fell off the map. I think if that's the only significant move the Senators make, they've made a mistake.
Fair enough. And now, based on what you just kind of came back at me with, I don't think I can disagree. I would have disagreed 4 minutes ago, but I think so. And another name to kind of keep an eye on might be Freddie Anderson. I don't know what his availability is going to be like, but there's a couple goalies to look at. But Dayton, you don't think that they need a goaltender. Paul, what do you think about Markstrom or Freddie Anderson?
Well, just listening to Dayton, he's a convincing guy. I mean, now I'm on his side. And I think Dayton's kind of in Steve Staios' camp. I think as Staios said, look, these guys aren't as bad as their numbers say they are. So there are other issues. Defense, in particular. So, Markstrom, I don't know, getting a little long in the tooth. I think you need to have an eye on the future, and I don't think he's the future anywhere.
Yeah, well, I mean, he is 34, turning 35, so that makes sense.
And I will say, I'm not against getting a goalie. I think goaltending was definitely an issue last year, and Forsberg, who had looked good in Ottawa, suddenly wasn't very good. And their young up-and-comers weren't looking very strong. And Korpisalo had some really bad stretches. Goaltending was clearly an issue. I just don't think it's the issue. So I don't think it's worth spending a massive trade to get one of those big name guys. I think looking for either better defense to help boost that, because I think their defense is atrocious. I think adding Jacob Chikrin was maybe a bigger mistake than signing Jonas Korpisalo. he had points, great, but there was no defensive support, I don't think. He would I think he made the defense worse, despite putting up more points than other ones. And of course, injuries again, like Shabbat missed a lot of time. Hamonic is not, I think, valuable on the
I don't think
third
he's
pairing
welcome
anymore.
back.
Yeah, right. You've got a defense who can't support their team, and you don't have forwards who are playing defense. And so, yeah, the goalies are going to suffer if they are not super consistent. And they haven't got a super consistent guy. And I don't think there is a super consistent guy available in the NHL right now.
Aside from Ullmark.
He's okay. I mean, he had a 915, which is solid.
Yeah.
Well, he won the Vezina last year.
With a 938, yeah.
Yeah.
He dropped down this year, though, right? He fell with the team.
Yeah. That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
I do think that every goaltender is a product of the defense. Some are just better and can bail the defense out more.
Yep.
So, yeah, you sold me. You must be doing persuasive writing with your class at school, are you?
Brian.
Let's move on to another Canadian market and talk about Nikolai Ehlers. Speedy winger, a lot of offense there, underutilized for what seems like his entire career. He's getting third line minutes, which is criminal. Do you think Ottawa should target him? I do think that a Chychrun for Ehlers trade, Ottawa would have to add a little bit, and probably an extension, maybe both ways. I don't know. But what would you think about acquiring Nikolai Ehlers, Paul?
Well, the way I looked at kind of categorized problems. So, all right, where are your holes? The holes are at defense, particularly on right defense. There's a hole in goal. And then up front, what you've got to do is try and replace Tarasenko / Kubalik.
That's not too hard.
Yeah.
Replace Kubalik.
Well, yeah, but
do it with somebody, though, right?
Well, that's true. That's true. But you kind of got to replace DeBrincat, right? Which is not something they've done. How high a priority? I think you got bigger problems in on D and in goal. So, Ehlers, fine. I don't know. What do you think he cost? What do you think you got to give up? You mentioned Chychrun.
Chychrun, second or third round pick and a prospect of sorts. Not a very highly, not that Ottawa has a high value prospect, but just kind of another asset to throw in there.
Yeah.
If he's coming with an extension.
Yeah, okay. You get rid of Chychrun. Well, you got too many left wing on defense anyway. So I don't
too many lefties. Yeah,
I don't think it's going to make your blue line worse. So
no, and especially with Clevin would take that spot and add a different aspect. Obviously, Jacob Chychrun is a much better defenseman than Tyler Clevin today, but he adds a different role, more of a third line shutdown guy, or third pair, I guess. Shutdown guy. So I think that losing Chychrun for not a defenseman is not a problem. Dayton, what do you think?
So I'm more interested in adding Ehlers than a goalie. I don't know if he is quite the right fit. I think the Senators need a right winger, Ehlers being a lefty. And it doesn't look like he's played much right wing in his career. I don't think it's a massive switch, but
he does play a lot of both.
Does he play? Okay, so I'm just on Elite Prospects, and they are only listing left wing, so that's my bad. So if that's the case, then I'm much more interested. He is a great goal scorer. He could fill the gap that has been left by both DeBrincat and Josh Norris, who doesn't seem to play all that much. Now that's like 60 goals you're losing, and Ehlers could bring 30. He got close in 17-18. He had 29. That's his career high. But still, he's not scoring usually less than 25. So I don't know if I'd pay Chychrun a pick and a prospect. If it's just Ehlers, I'd want maybe a prospect coming back as well, or a pick. But the Senators probably do have to pay a little bit more than just a guy for guy kind of swap.
Yeah.
But I think that addresses more of the issues. It creates a much more solid top six, which I don't think the Senators have right now. I think they have an interesting top six, but not a solid one, if that makes sense.
Well, if you look at the second line left wing spot, which I think is I'm going to say the biggest hole on this team is second line left wing. Over the past years, Paul, you mentioned Kubalik and Tarasenko played a lot there last year. Before that, it was DeBrincat. Before that, it was Nick Paul. Before that, it was Tim Stützle. Before that, it has been a carousel of players that have been going in and out of that spot. There has been absolutely no consistency in the second line left wing spot season over season. And I think that that's what they need. And I think that if you make up a top six of Tkachuk, Stützle, and Giroux, and then you have Ehlers, probably Pinto, Batherson, I think that makes up a much better top six than what they've had over the past couple of years.
No, I very much agree with that.
Yeah, and that stability part, that's important. Paul, any last thoughts on Ehlers?
No.
So moving on, another player in a very similar situation as Ehlers is Marty Necas. So he is he's a pending RFA. Don't know what's going to happen. Carolina has to deal with some money issues. He feels like a bit of an odd man out, and there's been some rumors about it, but is he somebody that you'd be interested in? He's a right winger, like you mentioned, Dayton. And he can play center. He hasn't played much center under Rod Brind'Amour, but he can. So is his versatility an asset? What do you think, Dayton?
Oh, I'm super interested in Martin Necas. I think he is a fantastic player. He was, I think I remember him playing on the World Juniors, and he was really, really dynamic. Made the NHL, had one season of 71 points. So that was last year, 22-23. Has been more so around that 50-point mark. I would probably argue that's because he has been the odd man out, because the Hurricanes have such a good top six. And so he's not getting those top 6 minutes. You throw him in with Ottawa, I think that is going to be really dangerous. He's a big guy. He shoots right on that right wing. He's not going to shy away from some of that physicality. He's not a physical player, but I don't think he's shy about it. He's very competitive. Yeah. Throw that on the first or second line. I would pay what it takes. I think the Senators need to get on that.
I'm in the same boat. I think that he should be target number one in terms of offseason trades. Just because when's a guy like this that's this kind of impactful coming for trade and maybe at lower than market value, right? You look at his season this year, 24 goals, 29 assists for 53 points. He was a -9 on the Hurricanes in 77 games. The fit doesn't feel as good as it could be. I do think that they absolutely appreciate him and they enjoy having him on the team, but is he really going to be worth, I think that his contract is going to be bigger than his production looks to be. Right now he's only making $3 million and he's only hit, so last year you mentioned 71 points. This was his second best year production wise with 53. That's not ideal, but you can see it. He has so much more in him than that. So, and he's also only played over 70 games 3 times. So I think that Marty Necas would be a fantastic pickup. Paul, what do you think?
I don't know if he'd be my number one target, but I will give him this. He is from Carolina, and hopefully he would bring in some Carolina Hurricanes DNA, which the Ottawa Senators desperately need.
Yeah, I agree. Could you imagine this team with Rod Brind'Amour behind the bench?
Yeah, well, he just re-signed. I mean, I love Brind'Amour.
Fantastic. So let's
maybe
move
that's
to defense.
What Green has in his future. Maybe Green is the next Brind'Amour.
That would be nice. That's fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So what do you think about some defense options? Paul, we'll start with you. Mackenzie Weegar. Should Ottawa be targeting him?
Yes, of course, absolutely. He's a good Ottawa boy, good from a marketing standpoint, and he's a right defenseman. Go get him. I think he should be your top, one of the top targets for you if I were Stales.
Yeah, he's definitely up there. What do you think, Dayton?
Yeah, I'm think Uyghur's a great pick. I think he's a little old, but he also just put up career numbers, I think. So
He did.
yeah, nothing wrong with that. That solidifies the defense, which has been incredibly porous.
He's 30 and he's got 6 more years after this one under contract at 6.5. He's 30 years old. Yeah.
Oh, then scratch that about the age. Yeah, grab him. I mean, if he's available, grab him immediately.
Yeah. But sorry, he's got 7 years. Cap Friendly already moved forward to the offseason mode. Yeah, so it's at 6.25. I think that's a fantastic option for Ottawa. He put up, like you said, career numbers. He scored 20 goals this season and 52 points in 82 games. I think he's either going to be traded to Ottawa or named captain of the Calgary Flames this year. I know they have Backlund, but he is their guy now. So it's going to be hard to get him from them, but I don't know. We talked about this in the offseason a little bit, but what do you think of Colton Parayko, Dayton?
Is he also a right shot?
He is a right shot.
And he's still in St. Louis, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Trying to get my thoughts straight here. He's okay. He has his ups and downs. He's a 20-point guy, 30 points sometimes. I don't know. I'm just not as interested. I think there's a few more hiccups or kind of warts that you're taking in with Parayko that might be similar to adding a Chychrun. Right? He's not a perfect fit for the team. A lot of things do look right, but I just don't know if it's quite right.
Yeah, he had a much better season this year than he did last year. Last year he was miserable defensively. This year he was much better. But his 6'6" frame with great shot blocking and hits, I think that's something that would complement like Thomas Chabot very well. What do you think, Paul?
He wouldn't be on my list. I mean, there are other players that I'd pursue.
Sorry, go ahead, Paul.
He's a meh, if I can use that word.
It all depends on the price. Like if it's just like a third and a fifth going to St. Louis, I'm happy to see that deal happen. But if it's like some significant assets being traded, then I don't want to see it.
I'd rather spend it on Uyghur, Parayko.
Yeah, exactly. Last name we're going to talk about, Pavel Buchnevch. He has been a star since being traded to the St. Louis Blues, and he was almost dealt at the trade deadline this year. They're going to revisit that this offseason. What do you guys think? How about you, Paul?
My initial reaction was, can we move on from these Russians? It would depend on the term. I mean, Dorian brought Tarasenko in for a year. I mean, Ottawa's got to stop making those types of moves, right? I mean, if you're coming to town, you're coming long term, and you're committing to the franchise. I don't know what Buchnevich would commit to coming to Ottawa.
So do you think that Ottawa should have signed that offensive Russian winger to a 3 years, let's say $5 million a year? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
and then traded him to Vegas and not tell them about the no trade clause. Oh, wait, sorry. That's Dadonov I'm thinking of.
I don't know. If I'm a general manager, yeah, Dadonov. I mean, but surely you must be able to sit down with these guys and just level with them. Look, we're serious. We're building a championship team here. Are you committed? And if you're not, I totally understand. But if you're not, we're not signing you.
But who are you seriously going to convince that this is en route to be a championship team with the way that they've been over the last 7 years? That's like the only reason Ottawa got Tarasenko is because nobody else had the space or need for him. And they just kind of said, hey, listen, we have a spot for you. And he was like, I guess so.
Yeah, he parked himself in Ottawa and knowing that at the trade deadline, he'd be a rental and probably back in Florida where he's kept his family. But I don't know. Yeah, okay, good point. I mean, who are you going to convince? Convince Giroux to come to town.
Hometown guy. I put a caveat on that.
Yeah.
Dayton, what do you think of Buchnevich?
Ottawa sure has some rough luck with Russians, eh?
Oh,
Zoom
totally.
has been great.
Yeah, but doesn't it all go back to Yashin?
There's another example. I hate to raise that. I almost want to cry at the mention of his name.
Right?
Yeah.
Nothing against the Senators adding some of these guys, but it just seems to not work for whatever reason. Yashin was, I mean, it started out great and ended really bad, but that was because the management were kind of dumb. And then, yeah, Dadonov, Tarasenko, more recent examples. As for Buchnevch, I think he could be good. I just wonder if maybe he's clicking in St. Louis and wouldn't click as well elsewhere. I think he does fit well. I think he's kind of that, he's got a good motor. He's a tough-nosed player, like an in your face, even if he's not like a Necas, right? He's not afraid to go into those tougher areas, but he's not a physical guy. If I'm remembering some of his stuff correctly, it's haven't yeah, I didn't know this guy was on the radar, so I didn't look at him. But to Paul's point, having only 1 year is not the kind of guys you want to be adding and then taking that risk. Dorion was doing that like he had a playoff team in his pocket. He didn't. So he just added guys who were for a playoff team, and surprise, it didn't work because the Senators didn't have that staying power. They need guys who are here to commit for at least 3 years because this is not going to be a championship team next year or the year after. And I'd put money on that. In fact, I'd probably put money on them not making the playoffs next year. That might
If
not
I
be
was a
popular.
betting man, I would. I would as well.
I think they get closer. I think they get significantly closer. I do not think they get in.
It's hard to get much further.
Yeah. The East is really clogged, and I don't see Ottawa putting in enough to compete with some of their biggest rivals like Buffalo and Detroit. And I mean, Boston's in there now. They're about at the same level, even if they're taking a step back. A lot of their guys are getting old.
Yeah.
If Buchnevch signs for 3 years, basically when he shows up, then that's fine. Same with the other guys, right? There's a few other guys we talked about who have limited deals. Necas is one. I think his contract is expiring this summer.
Yeah.
Who's the other guy?
Nikolai Ehlers. He's up next summer.
Yeah. So same thing. He needs a deal if he's coming to Ottawa.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's no point because guys show up, they give a half-hearted effort, and then they leave as a rental and do great elsewhere. Ottawa needs commitment. And that's just something they haven't had for, 7 years.
From UFAs. They had a lot of it from RFAs that have blown up in their face.
Yes.
So we expect Steve Staios is going to be pretty busy this summer, but that's going to wrap things up for today. Next week, we're going to have Peter Berrettini on from the Hockey Writers. He's kind of our prospects guru, and we're going to be talking about some options at 7th overall and some draft stuff. So tune in for that episode. And if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.